Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home, the show dedicated to helping veterinarians, vet techs, dog trainers, shelter and rescue workers, pet sitters, and all the other animal crazy pet professionals manage their stress and find more joy. I'm your host, Colleen Pilar, and I'm thrilled you're here with us today. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on your favorite app so that you won't miss a single episode. This episode is brought to you by our free community, the Circle of Resilient and Thriving Pet Professionals. If you like the ideas shared here, then you're invited to continue the conversation with other lifelong learners in the community. You can find out more at colleenpilar.com. It's the perfect place for you to learn cool stuff, feel good, and take action to create the life you love. Come join us. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Robynn Harris from the Assembly of the Wandering Shepherd, which is not your typical dog training facility's name. So welcome, Robynn. Can you tell me a little bit about what kind of pet professional you are and how you wound up with a business with that name?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to meet you and talk with you today. The name itself kind of comes from what I was seeing and experiencing in the world. I was a dog trainer at the time, and COVID hit, and then I had this opportunity to kind of create my own thing. And the assembly part is really about community. I wanted to create a community, and the Wandering Shepherd was, the shepherd part is a little bit pastoral. You know, pastor and shepherd mean the same thing. I also had a German Shepherd at the time, so there was some play on that word. And I didn't have a location of my own at the time. So I literally went and I taught in different locations. And so I was wandering a bit. And I kind of put all those pieces together, and that's what I came up with.
It's really kind of cool. And it does play so nicely with, the shepherd having the dog connotations as well as the shepherding connotations.
Yes, exactly.
So one question I always like to ask, just sort of to give us a little grounding, is when you were 10, what did you think you were going to be as an adult?
Boy, at 10, I don't know. I think I wanted to be everything. I can tell you that at 18, when I went off to college, it was in criminal justice. And I thought I'd be a police officer and then maybe law enforcement. At some point, I went into youth ministry work, and I thought, great, I want to be a youth pastor. And then as life is, I think for many of us, somewhere along the way, I stumbled into dog training. And from there, things grew. What got me into dog training was this dog that you've mentioned right behind me on the Zoom channel,
which people can't see because we're audio only. So it's a gorgeous German Shepherd you've ever seen with a very beautiful smiling face.
Thank you. She wasn't even my dog. She was my sister's dog. My sister got a dog, and she was a pretty remarkable puppy. When I met her at 9 weeks of age, knowing very little about dogs, I knew this was a different dog. Looking back, I would describe her as a thinking dog. And when I teach puppy classes, I look for what I call thinking dogs to go into therapy dog work. They're the ones that are really paying attention to their environment, really paying attention to the people, not necessarily full on crazy puppy. Though my dog certainly had crazy puppy moments, but she was a thinker. And we kind of thought this would be a great therapy dog, but we weren't sure where to go. And about the time she was about 3 or 4 years old, there was somebody at the daycare where Shotzi was attending, Shotzi's the dog, who was teaching a therapy dog prep class. And we thought, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity to actually learn about it. So my sister and I both took the class together. And we had always taught with positive reinforcement, but I didn't spend a lot of time learning about it. I just knew, I didn't want to be somebody that would hit my dog. I didn't want to be somebody that would make my dog scared. So I was doing this thing. But when I went through this therapy prep class, I started learning about the science of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that our therapy dogs do not have to be these masters of obedience, that they can think for themselves, that they can make some decisions for themselves, that we should find a way to ask them, do you want to go to work today? And that really opened up this love in my heart for this training and teaching aspect that I hadn't really encountered before. And it was really interesting at the end of that 5-week class. My sister kind of was like, this is basically, therapy dog work is work with my dog, but I'm already working 50 hours a week caring for people. I don't really want to now work more with my dog. On the other hand, I said, this is work with my dog. I really do want to do work with my dog. And so out of the 4 adults in Shatzi's life, I was the one that was really exuberant about pursuing therapy animal work. And that led me to work with a dog trainer so that I could kind of continue growing my skills and my education more than anything. And I kind of came in as an apprentice, and continued to do the therapy dog work. And that's how I stumbled into it. And for me, the thing that really impacted me always from the beginning was, yes, I was training dogs, but really what I was doing was teaching people about the relationship with their dog.
Yeah.
And that's probably that's the foundation of even where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything about dog training is directly related to teaching people. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is, particularly about the relationship, but just in any sense, that we're asking them to change their behaviors. We're asking them to adopt new ideas. And so to recognize that anyone who's got a pretty decent grounding in dog training, they actually have really good knowledge about changing human behavior.
Yeah.
Whether or not we apply it to our own lives, which is the hardest, or to other humans' lives or our children, but it's there, it's in there. And when you start learning about it, you come up with, oh, it's just like dog training over and over and over again.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So very similar because we are, of course, such emotional creatures. Our decisions are based on emotion, and helping us to know, do you want to? You were saying like one piece with the therapy work was, do you want to go today? And that's such an important piece of this. So how long ago was this when you sort of fell into this world and started down a whole new path?
It was about 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So when you look back on the you of 10 years ago who had no idea what was to come, what's something that you would like to acknowledge her for?
And acknowledge, my 10-year-old, well, that would have been like my 40-year-old
You of 10 years
self.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not you, the child, but you of 10 years ago who was showing up in a dog class and just feeling like, oh, there's something here for me.
I am so fortunate because when I did make this jump, we already knew that aversives were not the best way to train dogs. And while I haven't used aversives with dogs, I certainly had a spray bottle for my cat at one time or another. And to join this industry at a time where the science was solid, we get better, more longer lasting relationships, which of course feeds into obedience. I kind of think of obedience as behaviors that help us live with our animals. They are their own, not people, but they are their own beings. Mm-hmm. We are our own beings. And in any relationship, there's got to be some compromise and some give and take. And I got into this business at a time where that was becoming more and more prominent throughout the dog training world. And I don't have to go back and go, oh my gosh, I taught a lot of classes with things that I'm sad about.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't do that. I still have a lot of things I wish I didn't do, but I got in here lucky, and I'm really happy about that too, because it allowed me to really absorb the great things that are in our industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you were mentioning compromise and give and take, I had a flashback to a conference that I was at, where I'm, just sitting in the chair with my little notebook on my lap. And Sue Sternberg was on stage and she was talking about training, and she says, and there are no perfect dogs. And there's this grumble around the room. She looks around and she goes, I know some of you think you have the perfect dog. I know. But I guarantee you that dog is over 5 and you have learned to
Oh, goodness.
compromise. And it just was like such a moment of hilarity as we were like, oh yeah, the perfect
I
dogs. Yes,
love
they
that.
are. They're
Yes.
over 5. And yeah, oh yeah, maybe we have learned to compromise a little, because it is a relationship. It is about who are you and who am I and who are we together?
Yes.
Which I guess ties back to your piece earlier about assembly and community and
Yeah.
relationship. So, okay, so there you were 10 years ago, and you dove in, and you've just never looked back. Like once you did it, this was it, or you dabbled for a while doing this and other, or
I
how
would
did that
say
go for you?
that it's one of those things that just kept developing. So
Mm-hmm.
I was teaching with somebody on the weekends, maybe a little bit during the week, and then I was working with my dog doing therapy animal work, and we were working with kids. And then I added a hospital to that. And when I started working at the hospital, it was a much different clientele. And I met a couple of people, wonderful people, but they said to me straight up, I need to put my dog down. I can't do it. So I go home at the end of my shift and I pick my dog up out of the crate and they're covered in poop and pee and I have to give them a bath, and I just don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know what. And at the time, I didn't know what to say to them. And there were other people that had expressed deep sadness over a pet that had died. And maybe it was a pet that had died 30 years ago. And I would say it was even like little micro traumas for me, because I would come home and I was like, I don't want to hear any more dead dog stories. I started coaching. I teach the pet partners handler class for pet partners. And in that class, I was prepping my students for, hey, you might get a lot of dead dog stories, and you need to guard your heart a little bit, because many of us with healthy dogs don't want to hear those awful stories. But I knew that they were talking to me because they found me to be a safe person, and they felt the need to talk to somebody. And somewhere around that same time, I moved. My dog and I started working in a prison. So I started working with the adults in custody there, and they too were going through a lot of grief. They were no longer with their pets, and some of them had pets that have died while they were incarcerated. Some of them, their pets were perfectly fine. They just couldn't see them. And there was a moment where one woman had said to me, oh, my dog recently died. I'm so sad. I feel awful. And I said, what kind of dog? How old? And she was an Australian Shepherd who was 17 years old. And I went, wow, that was a well-loved dog. And I certainly believe you're not going to get to 17 unless there's some love in there. I mean, I know genetics plays a huge part, but if that dog doesn't feel loved, I don't know if they can make it to 17. And she said, really? You think that? And I basically gave her that same explanation. And it's rare, but every now and then you can see emotions come off a person where she literally sat up a little bit straighter, and she got a little bit of a smile on her face. And it's not that our sadness went away, but I think some of the guilt did.
Yeah.
And I started to realize that we grieve over a lot, not just death. And if I could find the words, if I could get the education to know what to say, maybe I could help people on this path of healing. And this would have been about 2019, because that's when I really got into pet grief. Like, what do I need to do to become a pet grief expert?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of quick programs out there. There's some, it's still such a new field that, you can't get a 4-year degree in it, as far as I know. But I did find a program, and their pet grief program was just one module of their animal chaplaincy program. And when I looked into the animal chaplaincy program, I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. And I happen to know approximately the date on that, because I paid all my money to the school. I think it was like November of 2019. And as you know, in March of 2020, the world shut down, which in some ways was a huge benefit to me, because I had some time on my hands to really dive into my education. So that's kind of the arc, where it's only been 10 years, but there's been a lot that's happened in those 10 years.
Yeah.
Of course, COVID brought a lot of grief issues for us on many different levels. I've had the opportunity to learn more about people. And I treasure people. Again, that community part, when it came time to actually create this nonprofit, what I was seeing in my dog classes was some people were working their dogs probably longer than they should, because they didn't want to lose that community. If you go to agility class every week, those are your friends. That's your community. And I wanted to create something for those of us who have senior dogs who are not working in the same sports that we once did, but they could come together and spend time together and talk about those challenges. The thing I love about puppy class was getting people together, and, one student will go, kind of sheepishly, hey, my dog's humping a lot. And then 3 other hands go up, and they're like, oh my gosh, me too. And there's a community there teaching, yes, these are normal behaviors. Here's how we're going to deal with it. We're going to make everybody feel better about this. But we don't have that on the other end. And when our dogs age and they hit that senior status and they slow down, community is all the more important, I think. And I wanted to be part of that.
Yeah. I have a friend who wrote the book, Senior Dogs for Dummies. And she said one of the biggest frustrations to her was that there's so much information that can be shared to help senior dogs have better lives, but that people often sort of treat their dogs as known entities by then. Like in puppyhood, you're learning everything to make this work. But the transitions are so gradual, and things happen and over time. And we're like, well, I know everything about this dog. I don't need to read something new or learn something new or go to a new place, because I know what I need to know. And to have a place where people could have community and connection, and that the senior dogs could be getting some needs met there too, is a really lovely way of just empowering all of them.
Yeah. So I created the nonprofit, and I took from all the people I know and the classes I've taught. And, one of the classes that I created right away I call it olfactory fun. And it looks a little bit like competition nose work or competition scent work, but it is, it's just fun. There's no stress on anybody, because there's no right or wrong answers. And it is a wonderful thing for senior dogs. Yes, the young dogs, the competition, all those dogs are going to love it. I haven't met a dog yet that doesn't love searching through boxes to get treats. But the senior dogs who maybe haven't been in classes for a couple of years, they get out of the house, they get to work at their own pace. And then additionally, it's that human component again. It's that pet parent who's like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen Fido have what I call pep in his step for a number of years.
Yeah.
And that movement also, I mean, here's the couple other components is I became a certified canine fitness trainer at about that same time. And I became a companion animal end-of-life doula about that same time. I had a lot of time on my hands for education, so I embraced it. And so we can get senior dogs to move. I have this one class, and it is a class where the pet parent just pretty much sits there and watches their dog. And yet it is a class that gets dogs to move. It is a class that gets dogs to have fun. It is a class that gets dogs excited about life again. And I don't understand the science on this completely, but it does build the bond between human and dog. And I think that goes back to, as we know, dogs will play more and more exuberantly when their pet parent's watching. And so I think there's something along those same lines. And it's so wonderful to see a dog who is 10, 15, or I've had a few 17-year-olds come in and feel better, not just physically, but feel better emotionally. And that human component feels pretty darn good as well. And they do get a reconnection that they sometimes haven't felt in a number of years with their dog.
That's awesome. I'm wondering if you could just veer off for a minute and talk briefly about why you chose to do it as a nonprofit, because I've been asked questions about nonprofits, and I have to tell people I don't know anything about that. But it comes up occasionally in coaching calls where people will say, oh, I'm wondering if I should create a nonprofit, or, should it be a nonprofit? So what were some of your reasons for doing it, and what is your best tip if somebody is thinking, like, what should they be focused on? And I'm not looking for you to deliver an entire class, but just like a quick little summary of, because that's different. And I think it's worth noting.
For me, I wanted to provide the end of life care and the end of life services for free. It's really hard. First of all, for when we're talking about pets, it's hard to find the extra funds anyway. And it's going to be, for me, it's going to be a bit of a block if I tell somebody I would love to help you with your senior dog's life expectancies, but you have to pay me first. So I knew those services were going to be free. But then I wasn't sure how I was going to fund that. I mean, donations are great, but I am awful at asking for money. I should hire somebody to do that for me because I'm not good at it. But I had this other thing. I was a dog trainer. I knew how to train dogs. So I thought, well, I know I'm going to teach dog classes, and all of those funds are going to go into the helping people and making sure those services are free. And I could not do this if I didn't have a spouse who actually helps me. I mean, she underwrites me. So I don't need to depend on this job to put a roof over my head or to put food on my table. And so for me, that was the answer. For other people, I'm not sure. I mean, you're going to really want to work with your finance person to figure out if this could work for you and how it's going to work from you. You might do something, like, hey, I'm going to continue as many of our independent dog trainers do. I'm going to work here for 40 hours a week for my house and my food and my healthcare. And then I'm going to do my dog training on the weekend. You may find a way where you can carve out some of it. Then this is the nonprofit and this is my profit part. I I'm not an expert on this. I can just tell you, for me, part of ministry for me is to help people without a financial barrier.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that, just because it does come up from time to time, and
Yeah.
it's not. I haven't had a guest on the show before that I could ask the question to. So lucky you, you're it.
Yeah.
Hi.
There is some complexities to it. I created Assembly as a religious nonprofit, which gives me a little bit of a wiggle room with the IRS because they don't really look at religious nonprofits very closely. And it is a ministry, so it's that worked better for me.
hmm
And for other people, they might want to go a different route.
Thank you. So I always ask my guests to share some words that have meaning for them. And the words you shared were a paraphrase of the famous Maya Angelou quote. You said, "When we know better, we do better." Can you tell me a little bit about what those words mean to you and how they sort of came into your life? Like, how long have these been words that you've used as touchstones?
Boy, I think the first time I really remember saying this to somebody was probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and it was talking to another dog trainer who said that she felt bad or guilty because of the way she had trained dogs previously. And I'd taken that home, hadn't really known what to say to her at that moment, but later that night I was like, oh, I remember this quote that's out there. And in that time, as now as a force-free trainer, I certainly get a number of folks who come to me and they're like, oh, I used a shock collar. And it may have been last month, it may have been last decade. It may be people saying, I left my dog chained up in the backyard when I was a kid. And how do we deal with that kind of guilt? And I always tell people, well, that guilt, that thing that is making us feel bad now, is the reason it's a good thing. It means we're going to do things differently now. And I come back to that Maya Angelou quote: when we know better, we do better.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we can play with those words a little bit. I know her exact quote is a bit different. It was very personal to her. But I think that we should be growing every day. We should be becoming better every day, whatever better means to you. And there are going to be things we're going to look back on that we're not too happy about. We're not too proud about.
Yeah.
And yeah, those feelings, boy, that's not a good feeling. But what it does mean is that we are doing things better now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
even the things I'm teaching today, I might look back 10 years from now and go, oh, I wish I had known better 10 years ago.
mm-hmm.
And I'm ready for that. I'm ready for whatever the science, whatever road the science takes me down.
Yeah, there's a book that came out in the last couple of years called Regret, and I'm blanking on who the author is right now, but I'll link to it in the show notes. And one of the key ideas in there is that, of course, regret is a great teacher.
Yes.
That what we take an action and we learn from the action, and from there we move forward more informed and more within our values and our knowledge and our alignment and all of that. And that's our life experience. That's all of experiences that we're always learning, we're always growing. And we can't kind of keep looking back, beating ourselves up about those things, but finding what is it can we take from that and how
Exactly.
can we move through that. So if I could give you a magic wand and you could grant a wish for all pet professionals, what would you give us?
Oh, boy. Well, I love it when people say that's a good question, because I think we're just stalling for time. Um, I think I would give all of us patience and grace. We all make mistakes. I think we all feel rushed for time. We don't have enough time to do it all. I think most of us want to save all of the pets. And if we could just understand that we can only influence what I call my sphere. I have a sphere of influence, and that is what I need to focus on. And then hopefully that sphere becomes ripples. But we need to be patient with ourselves and provide ourselves a little bit of grace and know we're not perfect and we can't do it all.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I'll take it.
Good.
So this has been a really interesting conversation. It's gone in some different ways than our usual conversations. And I'm sure people will have thoughts and feelings about it. If people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that?
The website assemblyofthewanderingshepherd.org is a great place to start. There is a business phone on there, and people are welcome to text me 24/7. It is a business line, and I have no problem putting that phone down and walking away from it sometimes. And again, as a pet professional, I cannot be on 24/7 because that does not serve my clients. But yeah, people want to know more. They can look at the website. They can call. They can text me, and I will talk to them. I love what I do. I love being able to help people and to minister to them, and I think that is going to impact their pets. And I want to do that as much as possible, knowing that I can't do it for everybody, but I'm going to do all that I can.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Robynn. I'm so glad we got this chance to talk today.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Thanks for listening to Unleashed at Work and Home. I invite you to come learn more at colleenpilar.com, where you can be steady, be strong, and be long.